When the stage lights finally dimmed on country music's golden era, the real show was only just beginning. Long after the last encore, dusty archives and whispered confessions cracked open like old guitar cases, spilling 21 secrets that even die-hard fans never saw coming. Some are heroic, some heartbreaking, and a few are flat-out mind-bending. Keep your headphones close, because every few moments another hidden chapter bursts into view, and the ride only gets wilder from here. Marty Robbins seemed content to croon about El Paso sunsets, but off-stage he was roaring through real sunsets at 200 miles per hour. For years he slipped into a fire suit, rolled onto NASCAR grids, and banged fenders with full-time pros. 35 Cup starts, a near-miracle top-5 finish, and almost nobody in the grandstands linked the driver's helmet to the singer's Stetson. He treated the racetrack like a secret side hustle, proving that country's smoothest balladeer also craved raw horsepower. Hank Williams lived fast, died young, and somehow managed a surprise wedding that even his manager missed. When his lonely funeral train reached Montgomery, lawyers were already feuding about an unexpected second wife named Billie Jean. The late-night ceremony in Louisiana had been so hastily staged that ticket holders were counted as witnesses, but the vows were legal enough to ignite years of estate warfare. Fans grieving Your Cheatin' Heart never imagined the real cheating scandal had just begun. Patsy Cline's voice could slice through a smoky auditorium like a silver blade, yet friends swore they heard unease behind every note. Just days before boarding the doomed plane in 1963, she told two close confidants that she didn't expect to see 40. Whether prophecy or premonition, her words froze them in place, and after the crash they replayed her comment until it sounded less like intuition and more like a whispered farewell broadcast on an empty frequency. Johnny Cash spent a lifetime bearing his soul in black, but the man in black kept one treasure padlocked. Tucked inside a cedar chest were hundreds of handwritten letters to June, raw, unmailed pages scrawled during lonely tours. Each note is a snapshot of yearning, like a private concept album nobody was meant to hear. When archivists opened the box, they discovered not just devotion, but the restless poetry that never made vinyl. Tammy Wynette built a dynasty on heartbreak, so it seemed fitting that even her passing stirred more questions than answers. She died at home, no autopsy, signed off as natural causes. Years later, a medical malpractice lawsuit pried open the records, revealing conflicting drug charts and a pharmacist's warning that vanished in the paperwork. Fans who memorized "Stand by Your Man" wondered if the system had failed the First Lady of Country, leaving her final chapter stuck on an unresolved chord. George Jones on stage was a tornado in boots, famous for lawnmower bar runs and microphone stand tantrums, but at home he was almost unrecognizable. Close friends say the possum tiptoed around his own kitchen, shy to the point of disappearing into the wallpaper. The same man who could belt "He Stopped Loving Her Today" to a stadium would whisper apologies to house guests for talking too loud. Stardom, it seems, was his mask, silence, his comfort blanket. Conway Twitty fooled radio DJs before he fooled the world. Born Harold Lloyd Jenkins, he stared at a road map, pointed to Conway, Arkansas, then Twitty, Texas, and cooked up a name catchy enough to stick to transistor radios. He even filed the legal paperwork, erasing Harold forever. Decades passed before obituaries revealed the MapQuest moment that birthed an icon and proved in country music you can rewrite everything, including yourself. Lefty Frizzell inspired Merle, Willie, and nearly every twang since, yet he slipped away in 1975, broke and nearly forgotten. The industry that once lined up outside his dressing room somehow forgot to pay respect or royalties. Only after his lonely burial did younger stars rally to raise a memorial headstone and a scholarship, admitting they'd been banking his influence while his mailbox went empty. Charlie Rich had a velvet baritone, but his temper burned high proof. When John Denver's name appeared inside a CMA winner's envelope, Rich struck a lighter and torched it on live television. Viewers gasped, label execs panicked, and the Silver Fox's career never truly cooled down. After his death, family letters confirmed the blaze wasn't a spur-of-the-moment stunt. It was years of bourbon-fueled frustration flicked into open flame. Eddie Rabbitt's songwriting catalog looked impressive enough, until estate auditors discovered dozens of hidden co-writes for mega-hits credited to other singers. He had ghost-penned hooks that topped charts without anyone tracing the fingerprints. Publishing ledgers finally exposed him as the secret architect behind melodies that had paid somebody else's mortgage. Keith Whitley left a final voicemail that still rattles spines. In a quiet drawl, he apologized for being a burden and hinted he might not outrun his inner storms. The message sat unheard until after he passed from an alcohol OD'd. Once released, every slurred syllable became a chilling epilogue to his unfinished songbook. Don Gibson sang sorrow with surgical precision, yet he never shared the diagnosis: lifelong, crushing melancholia. Journals found in a bedside drawer spelled out sleepless nights, therapy appointments, and an almost clinical dissection of loneliness. Fans realized "Oh, Lonesome Me" was not a clever hook but a medical chart set to music. Dottie West died because punctuality trumped prudence. Running late for the Opry, she ditched her stalled car and hopped into a fan's Corvette. The driver lost control and Dottie never made soundcheck. Investigators later determined a simple tow truck call could have saved her life, turning the tragedy into a cautionary tale about the fatal cost of rushing for curtain time. Johnny Horton haunted his friends with visions of a fatal collision. He told bandmates he dreamed of a drunk driver ending his journey, and he circled that fear until it became destiny. A head-on crash with a trucker who'd been drinking. The prophecy sealed itself, leaving survivors to debate fate versus self-fulfilling spiral. Mel Street packed coded cries for help into every vinyl groove. After he offed himself, lyric sheets were re-examined line by line. Songs once celebrated as heartbreak classics suddenly read like diary entries from a man waving a distress flag nobody recognized in time. Boxcar Willie looked like the lovable tramp who hopped boxcars for pennies, yet his earlier life involved top-secret Air Force missions and classified briefings. He swapped a colonel's clipboard for a battered guitar case and never bragged about the metal chest he left in storage. Only military paperwork released after his passing confirmed the Hobo Act was camouflage for a decorated intelligence career. Ernest Tubb ran his own quiet stimulus program. Struggling singers remembered him slipping rent money into guitar cases, buying bus tires, even covering hospital bills, all under strict orders to keep his name out of it. After the Texas Troubadour's funeral, they finally compared stories and realized they'd been part of a covert kindness network funded by a honky-tonk legend. Jim Ed Brown spent decades presenting the perfect family man on television specials, but a legal notice after his funeral introduced the world to a daughter from a private relationship. She received a share of the estate and a sudden spotlight, rewriting his autobiography in one court filing. Jim Reeves crooned "Gentleman Jim," yet the FBI cataloged him under Cold War security codes. International tours to Africa and Europe triggered government curiosity, and field agents kept tabs on concert guest lists, worried his smooth diplomacy masked espionage. The file stayed sealed until a Freedom of Information victory dropped the dossier into public archives. David Allan Coe bragged about prison sagas that made Johnny Paycheck blush. After his death, true crime researchers dug through court ledgers and found many of the tales ballooned from short stints into cinematic marathons. The real rap sheet was still colorful, but nowhere near the epic he sold on stage. Merle Haggard left behind notebooks stuffed with unsent letters labeled, "If I Don't Make It Back." Addressed to old bandmates, ex-wives, and pardoned enemies, the pages revealed a reflective philosopher who questioned every barroom brawl and backstage grudge. The letters ended with promises to keep improving, a pledge left half-written when the ink finally dried. Robbins's pit lane exploits remained mostly folklore until a vintage racing magazine published box score clippings proving the crossover legend. Mechanics remembered him tuning carburetors with the same precision he tuned melodies, methodical, sleeves rolled, grin hidden beneath grease streaks. One crew chief joked that if Marty had chosen engines over Telecasters, Richard Petty might have spent more Sundays staring at the back bumper of a peach-colored Pontiac. Billie Jean's contested vows rattled Nashville tabloids, but hometown locals whispered an even juicier footnote. Hank supposedly wrote an unreleased song detailing the courthouse saga, then locked the notebook in a hotel safe. Decades later, the page surfaced at auction, lines smudged by coffee rings, reading like a love-struck man's final attempt to outrun loneliness and lawmen in one breath. Klein's ominous farewell rippled through the scene, yet a deeper mystery emerged when her purse was recovered from the crash site. Inside lay a folded note titled, "If Anything Happens." It thanked her children, detailed funeral dress requests, and listed unreleased demos she hoped Decca would polish. That envelope transformed a random tragedy into the eerie climax of a self-authored script. Archivists cataloging Cash's love letters noticed doodles in the margins, road maps of backwater towns where the bus broke down, recipes for fried bologna sandwiches, and scribbles of new chord shapes. One anecdote claims a modern-day producer lifted a complete chorus melody from those sketches, turning it into a platinum single decades after Johnny penned it by flashlight. Tammy's controversial passing also revived gossip about a locked dressing room incident days prior when she collapsed between encores. A stagehand insisted a physician was summoned but ushered away by management who feared canceled shows. That sworn testimony resurfaced during the malpractice suit, leaving fans to speculate whether the fatal alarm bell had rung while the curtain was still up. When George Jones withdrew into silence, his wife Nancy sometimes found him seated in the dark living room, television snow hissing like distant applause. He'd pat the sofa cushion next to him and ask gently, "Can you hear that crowd? Or is it just me?" In those moments, the gulf between arena roar and living room hush felt as wide as the Grand Canyon. Conway's name change wasn't his only alias. Tax forms reveal he occasionally signed session work as Jenkins to avoid label conflicts while still collecting union scale. Those double signatures prove he manipulated both identity and industry rules with the same calculating charm he used on love songs. Frizzell's impoverished ending forced his widow to sell cherished guitars. One instrument wound up in a pawn shop where a novice bought it cheap, unaware the fretboard had birthed Long Black Veil. That six-string resurfaced at the Country Music Hall of Fame years later, a silent witness to both genius and neglect. Charlie Rich's combustible moment was preceded by an offstage argument about genre purity. New pop-tinged Nashville hits offended his honky-tonk sensibilities. In private, he called them bubblegum waltzes and lamented a town that forgot its barroom roots. The envelope fire became his final sermon, and to some, a drunken overreaction. To others, a protest performance piece. Rabbit's stealth songwriting extended beyond country. A forgotten stack of disco-era reel-to-reels credited him under a house pseudonym for grooves that filled roller rinks. Imagine that. The man behind Drivin' My Life Away also powered mirrorball anthems, a duality his estate finally embraced by releasing a genre-blending box set. Whitley's last voicemail wasn't the only artifact. Under his bed, family found a binder labeled, "If I Get Better." It contained tour routing plans mapped across American back roads, each venue circled in blue. On the next page, the same towns were crossed out in red ink with the words, "If I Don't." The binder reads like a tragic choose-your-own ending. Gibson's journals reveal he practiced daily visualization therapy, imagining himself shaking hands confidently before performances. But an entry dated 2 weeks before a Grand Ole Opry appearance confesses he still fought the urge to cancel. That duality, on-stage swagger versus backstage shivers, turns Lonesome Me from a sing-along into a self-diagnosis. Dottie West's accident inspired the Opry to overhaul its transport policy. Today, an official shuttle idles backstage before every Saturday broadcast in her honor, seatbelts newly tightened. Veteran musicians tap the hood in silent salute, remembering how a red-line schedule turned highway asphalt into black ice. Horton's friends claim the singer taped a note above his vanity mirror that read, "Stay off the road at night." The morning of his last gig, he peeled it down, smiled, and told his driver, "Maybe dreams don't chase you forever." Hours later, the nightmare proved it had waited patiently at mile marker 46. Mel Street's producer later admitted he once suggested the singer lighten his lyrics, fearing they edged too close to confession. Mel replied, "If I don't put it in the groove, it'll stay in my head." Listeners who revisit those tracks now hear a man balancing on the rail of a bridge, guitar as safety net. Boxcar Willie's military record included a commendation for defusing a classified crisis during the Cuban Missile era. Fellow officers said he could calm a war room by humming Hank Snow riffs. When he left the service, his colonel joked, "The Pentagon lost a strategist, but country fans just gained their folk hero." Ernest Tubbs' generosity stretched beyond money. He once handed a nervous newcomer a primetime spot in his touring show, fully aware the promoter would dock Ernest's pay for running over curfew. The rookie went on to top the charts, and not one interviewer ever heard the story until Ernest's son found the receipt stub. Jim Ed Brown's private child kept a low profile, but music historians later traced subtle lyrical nods in his solo catalog, lines about hidden photographs and love that can't sign its own name. Suddenly, the songs felt less like abstract poetry and more like coded messages to someone listening in secret. Reeves's FBI file also disclosed audience demographics from embassies he serenaded. Agents tallied diplomats who sang along in French, Portuguese, even Swahili. The notes read like an accidental study in soft power, country chords taming geopolitical tension, while Jim remained blissfully unaware he was on government assignment. Coe's myth-making machine inflated his rap sheet, but there's a reason fans believed it. The fragments that were true were jaw-dropping. He really did sit in solitary, really wrote lyrics on toilet paper, really watched a cellmate walk free by ratting out others. The fabrications simply turned volume knobs already set loud. Haggard's unsent letters aren't all sorrowful. One page thanks an early sheriff for that Bakersfield jail stint, claiming the cold bars knocked sense into a stubborn skull. Another forgives the stepfather who once padlocked Merle in a cellar for skipping chores. Reading them, you see a man revising his personal history like lyrics in a final mix. All these side stories thread together like barbed wire on a weathered fence, each twist catching a bit of the performer's true skin. They remind us that behind platinum plaques lurk unpaid bills, behind chart toppers lurk draft numbers, behind rhinestones lurk goosebumps raised by fears no spotlight can melt. Country gold was never polished, it was pounded on anvils of risk, regret, and resilience. So the next time a fiddle solo lifts your soul or a steel guitar slide breaks your heart, ask yourself what secret raced beneath that note. Maybe it was a stock car engine, a forbidden love, a government shadow, or a goodbye letter nobody was brave enough to send, until now. These revelations don't tarnish the legends, they burnish them, turning gilded memories into living, breathing stories. And if secrets still linger in the wings, rest assured, music has a way of playing the truth long after the band leaves town for us. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.